What art means to me, or how I define art, is that it's kind of an undefinable thing. I want people to see my spirit and see that I'm actually passionate and excited about it. You really have to believe in yourself and your art, because nobody else is going to believe that for you. Hi, I'm Roslyn, and I just started my LLC for Rozpaintedit. I started this year, and I'm really excited to just share my art with everyone. I know that at first I was just kind of shy and wanted to share my art and even like selling my art, but I'm so happy to have the support from other people, and I'm so excited for this year and for next year.
I'm going to start off with Rozpaintedit. You said you just started your LLC this year. Where did you get the inspiration from to start Rozpaintedit?
So I really got the inspiration from other people. So when I first started Rozpaintedit, like I did not want to sell my artwork at all. I would do shows and stuff like that, but I was really more so like, oh, I don't know. Like I didn't really have a business background. I didn't know what to do, but so many people kind of came up to me, and like strangers, they came up to me and they were asking me like, hey, are you selling your artwork? I would always say no, and people were like, well, why not? And I just felt like, I don't know, like I didn't really want to let go of something that kind of makes me.
Right, I feel that.
So I felt like art was just kind of like my baby. Like I was just like, no, like I can't get rid of it. But I saw that it made so many people happy, and I just really wanted to share that. So I thought that was really cool. I was just like, you know what? Why not? So I was just starting one day. I was just like, painting, and this girl hit me up on Instagram. And she was just like, hey, I love your piece that you did. And she just wanted to buy it. She wanted to purchase it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I mean, sure. And I think like her mindset was she really wanted to support like black owned businesses and women. And I was just really like excited about how somebody, noticed me and noticed my art. And I was just like, wow. And that I was like really happy. I was like, you know what? Like I want to do this full time. So that's kind of how the LLC just kind of came about and started.
Right, okay. So I know you talked about background. How long have you been painting?
So I would say that I've been painting since literally elementary school,
Okay.
of course. I would always just like scribble, and it's bad. Like I would like just scribble just like in random places, like always carry a notebook, always. Like I remember I was at Walt Disney World and I would just carry my notebook in the line. That to me like was kind of like just the start of me like getting into my creative side. Of course I was really young. I didn't know what I was doing. So I was just like, I didn't expect for myself to want to even continue it further until I kind of got to middle school. In middle school, I was just really annoyed with like my core classes. I was just like, I'm not good at anything. Like, like I just felt a lot of self-doubt in that moment. And then a few teachers, actually was just saying, hey, you really have a talent in this. So it was kind of cool because I went to different art shows like at Houghton College, and they were just telling me like, hey, like you would just have to put in a submission, and that's that. You get, I guess, scored according to like your techniques that you use and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, cool. Like telling my teacher, like, I really want to do this. Like, this seems so exciting. So she really helped me come down with different concepts of like, okay, these are your strongest pieces, so we can go according to those. Even though you really like these pieces, and these pieces are still great pieces, the strongest pieces that the judges' criteria are going to, let's just stick with these. When I was at Houghton, like I won first place for the first time, and I'm like, I felt like, wow, like something that I'm good at,
right.
And something that, people in my life acknowledge like, hey, like she has a future here.
Definitely.
So once middle school came, I started looking at different colleges, and that's kind of like where I wanted to go, but I didn't end up going to college for art. So that happened, and but.
So I want to talk about this piece right here, this Bob Marley piece. This is my personal favorite, and your Chanel piece. We don't have that right now because you actually sold it at the art show that I was at.
Yeah.
So those are my two personal favorites. But since we got this Bob Marley piece right here, I want to say, like, what was the inspiration behind the Bob Marley piece? Or was it kind of like, hey, I'm going to just paint Bob Marley? Like, how did that come about?
So it's funny, I was sitting at my art desk, and my art desk is like in my apartment and stuff like that. Like I don't have like a formal studio. I'm like, this is my studio, which is my dining room. So I was like, okay, like let me just go here. So as I started like painting, I'm just like, I don't really know what I want to paint. So then I started thinking about what really like inspired me, in high schools, different art shows that I saw. And I remember there was this gorgeous Bob Marley piece that I saw, and it wasn't like a high school that I went to, but it was a high school that I just visited for a play, and they had all of the students' artwork lined up, and I thought they bodied the piece. Like, of course it was like a long time ago. I was like in the 5th grade, and then I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna do a Bob Marley. And so I really wanted to incorporate the, like his culture, like within the background, where he's from. Like I just definitely wanted to incorporate all of it. And like I didn't really know like much about Bob Marley until I was like actually actively painting it, and people were asking me like, "Oh, what made you draw the piece?" I'm like, I don't know, but it was so funny because I found out his birthday was in February, and I actually finished the piece on his birthday. I really did want to incorporate his culture with the background, colors. So Jamaica was like, his hometown, and it's really cool because I was supposed to go to Jamaica before, and I really wanted to go on the One Love tour. And the One Love tour is basically, I think it's like a tour of his home. So I've never been, but it was really cool. So I really just wanted to, with this piece, just I wanted to capture who he was as an individual. Of course, like, I've seen multiple things of him singing, like there's a lot of pictures, but I really tried to put my touch on this. I tried to get his hair in a sense of like, okay, like, yeah, he's got like crazy locks, but like the focus is on him and who he was as an individual. And then of course, like, free to do whatever you want, right? Like, there's no intention behind, me like painting it. Like, I wasn't just like, oh, this is what it stands for, this is what it means. I just kind of wanted to draw Bob Marley or paint Bob Marley, like, I think he was a dope person. So I was just like, let me paint him, like, and a lot of people like him in his vibe, and like, a lot of people are inspired by him too, which I think is pretty cool.
Definitely seen the way your face lit up talking about this piece. I know how you talked about earlier when you said something about how, certain art pieces and certain techniques and things like that, kind of like activates your happy place in a sense when it comes to painting. So what kind of pieces do you usually do, or what's like your go-to when it comes to painting, where you can find that happy place?
So a lot of people ask me that, and it's more so from like inspiration around me. So I feel like I don't have a go-to piece. And everyone's like, oh, have a go-to. Like if someone was to ask you, like, like paint something, like right on the spot, I'm like, I don't know. You could, like, I would just take a paintbrush and go, Right. So I think for me, I try to just immerse myself into being calm and just kind of letting myself be free into my thinking. Like I don't put myself into a box. And so then it just kind of, kind of flourishes from there.
I know we was talking about that off the record too, about the being free part, because when I see this piece, that's what I think of. Like, I'm more of like a deep thinker kind of person. You know, I really be thinking about the behind the scenes, because I feel like people in general, they take advantage of the process when it comes to art. People that's just looking at the art, you know, they'll look at the piece and be like, damn, that's a cute piece. But when it really comes down to it, I feel like people take for granted the process that comes with that. And I'm not even gonna lie to you, like when I see Bob Marley, that's what I see, you know, basically freedom. Like I could tell that, like, you know, when I was saying earlier, you know, you smile, your face lit up when you was talking about the piece, you know, I could tell that you kind of had like some kind of passion towards that. And I feel like when it comes to art, your best art pieces come when you're in that happy space or that safe haven. So I definitely wanted to say that about that. Also, I just want to touch on a little bit about art in general. What do you think art means to you?
I see, for me, I don't put art in like a category. I personally don't have a definition for art. Okay. Which it's funny because a lot of people will be like, oh, I can look up the definition on Google.
Right.
Or, you know, just wherever. And I just feel like art is everywhere. Like, right. There's so much art. Like, and I feel like, say, like, there's an athlete, right? Mm-hmm. So that's an art. That's their art. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And say there's photographers, there's models, but there's also people in finance. There's people who are business people, and that's their art. You know? Exactly. So I feel like it's honing in on what makes you up as a person, and it doesn't have to define you. It's just something that you really do, and that's just something like that you're passionate about. But yeah, so I think that art comes in many forms, and it shouldn't be defined as, oh, it's just expression, you know, but it's literally all around you, and it's what you do in your day-to-day life.
And that's why I touched on earlier about taking advantage of art. You know, I feel like people in general, like you said, you know, the amount of art that it takes to make that building or make this couch, you know, we take advantage of that because we're just looking at it for what it is instead of looking at it for the process that comes behind it. And that's why I have so much of a passion for art, because I know it's always the little things that counts when it comes to art, what it is. When I think about art also, I think about culture. I think about culture in the sense of like music or fashion, things like that, you know, ways that you can express yourself. Like you said, you know, giving yourself that voice. My favorite form of art personally is fashion, because I feel like fashion is like a way of being loud, basically. You know? Because you can scream with fashion, you can put on a dope fit, but you can be the quietest person in the room, but your outfit is going to speak volumes. I love that form of art. And another personal favorite of mine is videos, video processing, the behind the scenes and the technical aspects of it. Because like I said, it's the little things, you know, we see it for what it is. We see the movie, we see the short films, we see the TV shows, we just see it for what it is. But that behind the scenes stuff, like that makes me really be passionate about the art process. You know, we talked off the record about this. We talked about support systems, who you felt like had your back and was there from day one. So for the people out there, who would you say is like your biggest supporters for the art that you do?
So it's crazy because I think that a lot of my supporters would be people that I haven't met before. Like, I will say this, you know, my parents were very supportive when they, you know, took me to different art camps, like the art galleries and stuff like that. Like, they would definitely, you know, grow that in me. But I think when it comes to actually pursuing art as a career path, it started to get a little bit of a more like real conversation, how it would be put. And it wasn't like they were trying to, you know, doubt my skill or anything like that. They were just saying like, hey, art is hard. You know, making it as an artist is not easy. And I was just like, well, I think that I'm good at it. Like, you know, but it was very like heart crushing. So I'm like, man, like, at the time I was like, man, I don't even think they support my dreams or anything. But it wasn't anything like that, because now I'm living on my own and I see that it's hard. But at the same time, I still have that thing in the back of my mind of like, man, like, what if I went to college for art? I went to college for computer science and communication. So I felt like, man, like, I never gave myself a chance. And I know that I had that talent, but I would have definitely liked to learn more. So I feel like a lot of my support system does come from people who I don't know, because they're the ones who kind of are inspired by the pieces, right? Like, they're just kind of like, oh, like, that really like either spoke to me as a person, or they're just like, wow, like, hey, I love Bob Marley. I listen to him all the time. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's really cool. And I'm hoping to even come out with more and more pieces. So I'm really excited because I have so many different ideas that I just want to share and I want to incorporate.
I just think that's like crazy. You touched on your support system being strangers. I have a theory for that personally, because I agree with you 100% about that. I feel like our closest ones that are close, the ones that live with us and interact with us on an everyday basis, they know us. They know us behind the scenes. They know our goofy side. They know our bad side, our good side. So it's kind of hard for them to see, in a sense, like, hey, Roslyn is an artist. You feel me? Because it's like they so used to seeing you as Roslyn, you feel me, instead of Roslyn the artist. But like you said, when it comes to strangers, I'm just walking past one of them like, damn, that's a dope ass Bob Marley piece. And like you said, that speaks to me. I'm inspired by it. So that definitely was a good point, because I definitely agree with that, because I feel like a lot of people in general, the reason why they don't pursue their dreams is because that biggest person in their support system that they want to be a support for them, they're not the ones supporting them 100%. So it kind of gives them that doubt. When it comes to doubt, because I know we talked about that. We talked about doubt a lot, especially off the record. When doubt creeps up on you and when doubt hits you, what is it inside of you that keeps you pushing? Like, I know sometimes people, they get insecure about certain things, or they get, they have these jitters, I should say, about doing certain things. So when that creeps up on you, how do you say, like, hey, I'm still going to go out here and do this? Like, how do you push through it?
So it's probably a cliche answer, but you literally have to like believe in yourself, Right. For me, I would say that when I try to push through things, I just am a very optimistic person. I also believe in the Lord. So I know that my spiritual health has kept me in peace and in tune with God, and that helps me be in tune with art, but of course, like, I respect all religions and what everybody else believes in. And if you believe in that or believe in yourself, whether you believe in a higher being, whether you believe in whatever, I think that you can kind of hone into that and start to grow in your art.
So I want to touch on any art shows or any projects that you have done that was art related. What steps did you take or measures did you take to kind of like just put yourself out there in a sense?
So I think for me, to prepare myself for different art shows, I try to make sure if I'm live painting to prep my canvas. But I always try to have things like the night before. Mm-hmm. It gets kind of difficult when you don't have like a lot of help or have somebody there to help you. Right. But I know that I did an art show this past summer, and that was tough. I mean, it wasn't really a show. It was my first vendor station. Okay. And I didn't know what to do. I was definitely like stunned, and I just was like, as long as it's here, I didn't care about anything. Like, I was just like, I could be a hot mess, whatever. And I was just like, as long as my art is here and people can see that. Right. And I think what made people actually want to purchase the art was that they're like, wow, like, she really put herself out there, and she has a good spirit. And I think that's really how I want to like build my client base, is I want people to see my spirit and see that I'm actually passionate and excited about it. So I've done other things in the past too. When I was telling you I didn't want to sell my artwork and stuff like that, those were like fashion shows. So I started doing fashion shows, and I did like body paint and stuff like that. So that was really cool. And people, you know, got very excited, just like, oh, you do art? Like, do you want to be part of this? Do you want to be part of that? So I feel like art has its own community, to where, you know, if they see that you're like trying, they're so encouraging. Exactly. Some artists aren't, but like some artists like kind of like have that little jealous, envious type of thing. Right. But there's so many artists out here who do want to like help other artists grow and are willing to mentor you. So I think that's like really cool.
It's like how like you're passionate about your art. Even with art, even before I knew that you knew art, 'cause I just found out not too long ago that you did art. But like, even about your other vendors, like I know you model on the side, I know you do these other projects and these other big things. So I see like the work ethic, you know, like the passion behind the artwork. You know, I definitely like that. And that's another thing I wanted to touch on. You know, final point. I want to talk about what you think every artist should have in like their personal toolbox. Because for me, I feel like if it was up to me, I feel like every artist should have confidence. Because without confidence, you're not going to excel in what you're trying to do. You could have all the talent in the world, but if you're not confident in what you're doing, all that talent is for nothing, basically. So for me, I feel like confidence is one, and then another is just perseverance and passion. You know, like I said about you and your project, you know, I feel like the passion goes a long way also intertwined with that confidence. So for you, what do you think every artist should have in their personal toolbox?
So I think that every artist, you know, should have in their toolbox is find out what personally means to them, right? So I feel like when I scroll on Instagram or, you know, when I see on social media, everybody has their own specific thing, you know, that becomes who they define themselves as an artist, right? Like whether it's through a technique or through something. So I would say have that technique, and then also, of course, like that confidence factor. You know, you really have to believe in yourself and your art, because nobody else is going to believe that for you. To get distracted from what other people are doing, you know, and then you're kind of just losing who you are as an artist and who you are as yourself. So I would say that what every artist needs, other than just confidence, right, is just knowing who you are as an artist, right? So if you know who you are and you know how your work is, definitely go with that, because nobody can create like you can. Right. No one's going to make the same thing that you do, you know? You can definitely get inspiration from other people and get techniques from other people, and that's a beautiful thing. You know, I love when people and artists share their techniques and share, you know, those little things that make them them. Yeah. Because even if you try to mimic what they do, it's still yours, and it's still who you are as an artist. But it's okay to find your niche and expand and learn, like being open to that learning. Okay. So, yeah.
She's a super dope artist. So if y'all out there, follow her at Rozpaintedit on Instagram.